Okay, everybody. Chop, chop, finish up. Lunch is over. No, I'm kidding. You have the desserts in front of you. And just like the pacing of this event, we are ready for the show. So whether you're ready for us or not, here we are. We had a wonderful award ceremony last night. So we already awarded the Circle of Excellence. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what the Circle of Excellence is about and why Lenovo won. But I do want to say that, as I mentioned last year, this is a really big year for us. 30 years of honoring sustainability and the triple bottom line. So sustainability is not, it's become more than a buzzword. 30 years ago, sustainability was a buzzword. It was something that ideally you do, and you know, if you're trying to do things right, but there was no, I hate to say it, real business value to it. People looked at it as, oh, something nice that we're going to talk about, but we're not necessarily going to fund. Well, fast forward 30 years later, the world has changed, and sustainability is now taking center stage. But to give us a little bit of the history, I'm going to invite Keith Helfrich up, and he, back in 1992, helped develop this criteria. He's had a lifetime as an academic and in industry, and we're honored to have him, and I know he has always been very instrumental in determining the winner, the criteria, and we are very grateful to you, Keith. So thank you. Why don't you tell us a couple of words?
Oh, thank you. Yes, this is always my privilege. I'm definitely an old guy, but I happen to also be an old environmental engineer before anyone gave a hoot that there was such a thing. So it's with great honor that I be able to, last night and today, just give a quick briefing. So as Amy said, it was created with some of us that were faculty and with, of course, the staff. And it's been such a great thing. Harry, is Harry in the audience? Okay. So Harry and I, at the request of Amy and the staff, wrote an article that summarizes the 30 years with some of the folks that were winners. So we hope that you take a look at that, please. Just a couple of comments about the award. As Amy said, it's the Sustainability Award, and really it's based on, the first time I came across it was years ago by Harvard Business and Cradle to Grave by other authors. And the idea is we need to have this like a stool with 3 legs. So if you're going to do it right. That is, look at the economics of your operation, look at the social issues, and also look at the environment. And you don't have to spend an equal amount of money on them, but you should put equal emphasis on them. So some people look at it in those 3 words, but others like a different way of looking at it. They say, no, let's look at it, same idea, but let's look at profit, people, and planet, the 3 Ps. So whichever way you want to look at it, doesn't matter. The fact is, it is no longer just a word, it is a requirement. So whether you personally can count it as one of your key metrics, the fact is your organizations do. And if you haven't ever looked, other than your own company, you go out on the website and every organization in this room probably, and every other major one, sometimes often will have a separate annual report that's strictly sustainability. So it's a key area. So that's what this award is about. And Amy, Harry, and I, we've kind of said we might even make some suggestions for the next 30 years. Not that I'll be around to do that. But anyway, so we know that the award was Lenovo, and so what I would like to do is say it's time to have and hear about how they handled what we look at the criteria. What have you done in the past? What are you doing now? And what are your plans for the future? So given what we see about the winner, I would say they're well on the way and they're leading the pack. So at this point, I'd like to introduce, as we did last night, Ben, who's a VP, to come up and tell us about the company. So Ben.
Thank you, Keith.
Okay. Yeah. Ben Massey. You guys met me last night. Just a little bit about Lenovo before we get into some of the questions that you maybe say. I get a lot of times people say, "What does Lenovo do?" So Lenovo is the largest PC manufacturer in the world. We also have a very large server business. We're the third largest server manufacturer in the world, and then we also have a phone business. We're the third largest in the West in the phone business, and there's a lot of Chinese players, so we're probably like number 7th in the world when it goes to around the world. So what you may know of Lenovo and where some of the heritage comes from is Lenovo in 2005 bought the IBM personal computer business, and then in 2014 bought the IBM's server business, the x86 server business, and then also bought Motorola's phone business. So Lenovo's basically become a global company largely by acquisition, largely by acquiring these kind of storied brands. And when they bought them, all of those businesses were losing money and struggling. And really what is really exciting, what I've enjoyed, I came over with the server acquisition, and so did Sandy. T1 came on later. But what I really like about it is if you think about, well, how do you do that? How do you buy one of these businesses that's losing money and then supercharge them? And the way Lenovo's really done it, the secret ingredient's 2 things. Well, 3 things, really. First is products, just outstanding products. And if you think about the ThinkPad, the ThinkPad is still developed and designed really in the same 2 labs around the world it always has been, US and Japan. That's where ThinkPads have always been designed and developed. That's the same people are doing it today, same locations. The second thing that was the core ingredient was supply chain, and that's why I think it's very exciting. Owning your own assets, owning your own factories, making your own motherboards, so we own our own PCBA plants, and being a vertical global supplier. And Lenovo really is. We have 2 headquarters. One is in Beijing, one is in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's truly a global company. If you look at the leadership, that's the third thing I think is really the success factor of Lenovo's is incredibly diverse company. And not just by all metrics of diversity. And especially the leadership team that's incredibly global. It's almost, if you look at the leadership team, it's a third from the Americas, a third from Europe, and a third from Asia. And that's exactly what our revenue looks like. And that's a lot what our supply chain looks like. So those 3 core ingredients have really led us to success. And we went from number 3 PC maker in the world to number 1. And the server business from number 7 to number 3. And the phone business is now number 3 here in the West. So that's a little about Lenovo.
That sounds great. Well, we have a great panel, and they are all part of the winning team. So Renee should be in my chair, and I'm here substituting for Renee, which is not easy to do, but she is with us in heart and spirit, I know. I have to say, I think I've been so impressed because I've had the pleasure of being on these calls with the SCLA and being with your team. And let me be the first to say, I think Lenovo has handled the disruption of the last 2 years exemplary, and you have kept your team together. So first question, Ben, personally and professionally, how has that impacted you, and what are ways that you think you have moved forward and progressed in the last 2 years? Because I love what you shared the other day. You said this is our shining moment in supply chain. And for you, it has been.
Well, yeah, it doesn't feel like that every day. I think that's kind of the thing that I was trying to say is it never feels like that. But it really, when you step back, it is. I think, just in terms of kind of where the big challenges have been, and I think a lot of you are dealing with this, the biggest challenge for me in the last 2 years is how do you deal with all the fires every single day that are more problems than ever before, and they have to be dealt with today, or we lose that customer, or this situation doesn't get resolved, or we don't this or that. And dealing with that at the same time when you really need to be more strategic because you can see the world's changing and you need to be out in front of it, but you don't have enough time to spend as a leader on both of those things. So I think that's been a huge challenge is how do you do both of those, and you don't do them as well as you would have in the past, but how do you do them both? How do you do them both, I guess is really the thing. And then the biggest thing that I think has been an excitement over the last 2 years, I talked last night about the revenue growth and opening all these factories, that's exciting. But for me personally, the most exciting thing is what we've been able to do for the people in the supply chain. Supply chain's always been a cost center, and it still is a cost center. But what I like about Lenovo is and maybe it's happening in your companies too with this current situation, is it's being viewed a lot more than a cost center. Are you winning or not in the marketplace? In a lot of cases, is your supply chain executing? And that's been a highlight for me is it's allowed us to grow our team, but more than that, promote our team We've promoted more people in the last 2 years than we ever have before. And to me, that is the most personally rewarding thing, is that people you see just absolutely working their tails off, and they just don't quit. And then you get to reward them, and you see how it benefits them and their families. And to me, at the end of the day, 30 years from now, nobody's going to remember anything about, maybe they'll faintly remember some of the stuff, but they'll remember, that's what they'll remember about enjoying work, is the people, and that's what I'm going to remember as well. So that's been the highlight, is we've been able to reward our people unlike we've been able to do in my whole career before. So those are my challenges and highlights.
That's great. So Sandy, tell us about you.
Yeah, I would say they're similar to Ben. I mean, the challenge for me the past year, 2 years, it's been the team looks to us for guidance, and they're looking to us for priorities, because everything is changing, and their job that they did the last 10, 15 years, it needs to be modified now. That doesn't work anymore. And again, everything's a priority, everything's critical, and they need guidance and direction, and that's what they crave, stability. And I don't know what the right answers are, but I know it's my job to try to help them figure out what those answers are. So it's really been, it's been trying to provide guidance and clarity in the presence of chaos. I'd say a highlight, and I guess it kind of goes along with that. I feel like this past year, a highlight has been keeping the wheels on, right? And I'm sure everybody deals with this. I mean, our people, people are at wit's end right now. This last year, people, they've been at home for like a year, stuck at home with their spouse and their kids, or an aging parent, or maybe nobody at all. And now they're back at work, and we're in this supply crisis and this logistics crisis. And I feel like I've spent so much of my time just in one-to-ones talking to people. They're having panic attacks. They might want to have a meltdown. They might just want to have a good old-fashioned vent, right? But not trying to fix it. I can't fix all this, and they know that, but just listening and hearing the people. And it kind of, for me, I felt like, gosh, I'm spending all of my time talking to everybody, and I'm not like working on fixing business problems. And it kind of took a minute for me to say, this is the most important thing that you're doing. It's our most important job as leaders, is being there for our people and listening to our people. So kind of that awakening, I would say, has been my biggest highlight for me.
I love that, listening, how important that is. Yeah. And they say that what really marks a great leader and makes them stand out is that they listen more than they talk. So I think that's wonderful. Taewon, you're in charge of strategic transformation. Wow, that was a tough thing in the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
How did you manage that?
Well, so I'm going to take a step back. Ben alluded to the fact that I didn't come over with the server transition in 2014. I didn't join this wonderful leadership team until January of 2019. And then we went home for 2 weeks in March of 2020. So I've spent more time at home than I did in the office. That's a disruption. And at home, I was greeted to a 7-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter, and having to become a teacher while trying to transform the business. And so I use that analogy because there's day-to-day disruptions at home that a parent has to deal with. But at the same time, you have to be strategic and develop a roadmap and a path for your kids to be successful. And that's the same thing that I'm doing at Lenovo, is I'm assisting the Bens and the Sandys and the Renees of the world in making sure that their day-to-day tactical execution is flawless and efficient as possible. But at the same time, looking ahead at what's to come. What are the future disruptions? What can we do to make the business more transformative and cutting edge? So that's my role. And I think the highlight of the last 2 years, and I think Morris alluded to it earlier, is that for some reason, even though we were apart, I feel we've become more open and intimate and having discussions now with our work colleagues that we would have never, ever had pre-COVID. So to me, that's the highlight, is I feel more connected to our colleagues, both local and abroad.
I love that, connectivity, big. So Ben, for you, sustainability, big, it's a pillar, of course, of the Circle of Excellence Award. And I know Lenovo does a really good job when it comes to transitioning, and has done that, to a circular economy. Can you give us a little more detail about that?
Yeah, sure. So from a circular economy, so we've always had like an asset recovery business that was always part of our business model. I say what we've done is we've amped that up quite a bit in the last couple of years. We've added to that something we call Lenovo value recovery, which is like asset recovery, but it's a little bit of a nuance on it where we're not only working with returning our products from our customers and our business partners, but it's basically taking everything internally that we use and finding like development systems and all that stuff and finding ways to monetize those. And then the third way from a circular that I think is really interesting, I mentioned this in the panel yesterday, was, a lot of the technology space wants to move as a service, and that's probably happening even beyond technology, moving to as a service. But that's been a big way that we can leverage circular as well, because when you're selling it as a service, it doesn't have to be product spec specific. You're just, instead of somebody buying a server with a certain configuration, they're buying the computing power, which means you don't have to put new stuff in there. And you don't have to put stuff that they've specified necessarily. All you got to do is meet the performance expectations they have. So we're using the as a service as a way to reuse equipment that comes either back or excess equipment, stuff in the past that at some point, some piece of it might have been scrapped. And that's generating more circular as well. So we don't want a one-size-fits approach on the circular side. But I think that's where we've been able to move the ball forward, is attacking it from 3 different sides.
What about your stakeholders? How have you remained responsible, and how have you moved the needle there?
So, I mentioned this a little on the panel yesterday too. So we've set very specific targets, science-based targets. A lot of people quote, we're doing this thing, but we really see, and I know some of you in this room are doing this as well, is you're setting science-based targets, and then you're mapping to it. And that's the way we communicate to our stakeholders exactly, what our commitments are. We're a very commitment-centric culture. If you make a commitment, you're going to meet it. And then what we've done, we haven't completely finished this, and I mentioned this yesterday too, but I think it's really interesting, is for next year, we're looking at how do we actually take those commitments that we've made, and what does it mean for the next year, what's the path, and we were going to pay our people on it. Meaning part of your bonus is going to be tied to our ESG goals. And those are tied specifically to the targets that we've set externally for like 2025 or 2030, but then mapped out year by year. So we did that for customer experience 5 years ago, and that's been really successful, tying 20% of our bonus to customer experience. And we're looking at doing the same with ESG.
Sounds wonderful. Something for us all to learn in the room. So Sandy, you have from quote to execution, you own all of that. And you talked earlier about, we're all dealing with these supply shortages. Mm-hmm. How are you ever executing and still having all this time, right?
A lot of your
to
wine,
be there for your
Amy.
people. Are you part of the Chardonnay Club too?
I am. I think, right, everybody sees the news. The industry shortages on semiconductors has been, it's been devastating. They go in everything that we make. I'd say tactically, when we saw it coming, we went out, we tried to do buy-aheads. Suppliers went from quoting 8 and 10 week lead times on things to quoting 40 and 50 week lead times on things. So we went out there, tried to get in front of it as much as we could, kind of secure our spot in line, getting early POs placed for way more than what we needed right now. We did a lot of alt qualifying, so on components that go on like our motherboards, the ones that are so constrained. We worked with development and engineering and went out and said, hey, we need to add another 2 or 3 suppliers that we can start sourcing this stuff from to improve our chances of finding the needle in the haystack, right? So we did a lot there. Something new, we kind of almost built a team overnight that just focused on components, right? We used to chase our tier 1 parts we needed to build our servers. Now we were peeling back a layer, and we're out scouring the market for the tier 2 components. And, we had to create a team to do this. We don't have relationships with these people, right? It was you just had to modify. And, you're out there every day scouring the broker market. Things are 10x the price. And they're here at 9 o'clock, and by 10 o'clock, somebody's bought them. Then you finally get them, and you've got to make sure, they're not counterfeit. It was just dealing with a completely different supply pool, but it just increased our chances of getting supply. And I guess the other thing I'd say, we attempted to demand shape. Everybody tries to do this. I think it's probably one of our biggest areas of improvement at Lenovo is, trying to sell what we have, trying to sell what's on the truck. The problem is the truck's pretty empty, right? But you're trying to guide customers and sales to where we do have supply. And like I said, I think we've got room for improvement there. But tactically, that's what we're doing. I think strategically to improve supply, Ben kind of hit on it. We're trying to go vertical. We're trying to do in-house. We've stood up another in-house manufacturing facility in Europe this year. We're taking on board design and building our own boards. Arguably, probably not the best time to get into that business, but we have. And it just kind of gives us a chance to more control our own destiny. So those are kind of some of the tactical and strategic things we're doing.
I love it. Thank you. So T1, we're going to talk, right? There's all these different components, but talent is huge.
Yeah.
And that's an area that, again, I have to say, congratulations. I mean, you've had the same team. There has not been a lot of turnover. I know Renee's a remarkable leader, but all of you are as well. So what are you doing? And I thought, Taewon, when you shared that, you had joined initially virtually, and yet you felt embraced by this company culture and the people, and you've been able to champion that to others.
Yep.
I think that's remarkable.
Absolutely, and especially in this day and age, if you think about Research Triangle Park, it's literally the Silicon Valley of the East now. I mean, all the high-tech companies are there. I'm sure many of you have some sort of office or branch office or DC in the area in North Carolina. Apple's coming, Google's there, Meta/Facebook, Cisco, NetApp, you name it, they're there. So the competition is really, really tough right now for the tech market. But what makes Lenovo so different is I think it's just a family culture. And especially in our group, in the server group, there's a family culture, and we generally are investing in the people. That's the bottom line, investing in the people. And just a couple of examples, we have an organization that's called People First, and we look at the employee experience from onboarding all the way through retirement and everything in between. Because the key is retaining our talent. You can get them on board, but can you retain them, and are you investing in them? And I'm happy to say that we're at least 1 percentage point lower than the average attrition rate in the market, in the tech market. So that's a huge win, and we track that on a monthly basis. We're sending these numbers and these data points to our executive vice president, Kirk, on the monthly basis, and we bring in the People First team that's comprised of HR, business people in the business like myself, to come in and talk to Kirk and the senior leadership team about the different metrics and the trends and what we're hearing from our employees. And we take the employee engagement surveys very seriously. As a matter of fact, I think it just launched last week or this week, what we call the Lenovo Listens. It's listening to the voice of the employee, like the voice of the customer, the voice of the employee. And it's one thing to have the engagement surveys, but it's another thing to track the responses and drive actions as a result and communicate that to our employees. And we do that very well. And just on a personal level, I'm very, very, my passion is employee development. If the members of my team are not happy and don't feel valued, and we've heard that earlier, I think we mentioned that earlier, if they don't feel valued or that they're contributing to the bottom line, you're gonna lose them. And so every single week, I have a one-on-one. So that's 4 one-on-ones, that's 4 engagements a month. And at least 2 of those times, I'm talking to them about leadership development and developing their career, nothing about the business at all. That's my primary focus. Additionally, we have mentor programs, we have shadowing programs, and as part of People First, it's making sure that the executive team has a fishing line, if you will, to the worker level. Whether you're mid-career, whether you're new hire, you have exposure and you have an opportunity to engage with the senior leaders. I think we do a very good job with that, especially in Renee's organization. Renee will talk to whether you're new hire or if you're a seasoned member of the team the same exact way. And that's what I appreciate about the business.
That's great. Well, it's a great culture. So Ben, going back to global disruption, I think that is something that we have all been challenged with. And we talked a little bit about the lessons that you learned. And you mentioned briefly, from a manufacturing, the bifurcated supply chain and how that's given you a competitive advantage. Can you, for maybe not everybody understands exactly how you're doing that, there's different ways you can do that. Can you talk about that, and do you really think that's helped you stay ahead of some of the global disruption?
Yeah, so bifurcated, when we use that term, means mainly you're not stuck in China, in one country, or one region. So really means you have supply network in the Americas and in Asia. So that's generally what we mean when we say bifurcated. Now, when I say that, you guys are all supply chain experts. You'll know, well, it can't be completely bifurcated. You're right. The entire ecosystem has not moved for technology products. Absolutely not. So there's no way to, I mean, that's in process, though. And what's going to drive that is, the front end of the chain making it as requirements, which is already, it's like ESG, right? The front of the certain large, impactful players forcing it. So that's starting to happen. It's happening in our space, in the technology space, with the large cloud players who consume a tremendous amount of technology, but also have profit margins that allow them to kind of push. We are one of the largest cloud suppliers in the world, and that's pushed us. So to really get to where Amy's going in terms of like how did it help us during the disruption is all of our manufacturing sites are regional because our products are big and heavy. But all those manufacturing sites are set up that they can ship anywhere in the world. So from a final assembly of servers, and we rack a lot of them, fully rack them, we can do that anywhere in the world. We used that all during as the first round of COVID in 2020 when you literally were shutting down the countries and the factories. We could move orders from one factory to the next, and we did that all the time, right? We were shipping product from Hungary into Asia and from Mexico into Europe and then Europe into the US. So we leveraged that. And then we have moved our vertical piece another layer, our motherboard manufacturing into Mexico. So we have motherboard manufacturing in China, we have it in Mexico. So we've taken another layer and moved it there. Some of our other suppliers, we've required that they move first out of China, have a second source out of China. Not move out of China, but have a second source out of China. And a lot of those have moved to Southeast Asia, and we're in the process of making those moves also into Mexico. So we've got a couple suppliers that are going to be our supplier for products like mechanicals and cables into Mexico as well. So it's in process. It's helped us during disruption because not everybody had that bifurcation or even any element of it, even though it's not fully the whole ecosystem to move. But if you had one piece of it, at least you're one step ahead. So I think that's where it's going. I think, in the technology industry, it's going to take some time because the ecosystem, you guys, many of you know this, right? I mean, the semiconductors and putting fabs in, that is not going to happen in, 6 months. But there's definitely a magnetic pull. And we want to be a leader on that. It's a lot like ESG because that's where your customers are going to demand. They're already demanding it. That's what they're going to demand. And you need it. We've all seen it. We need it for resiliency. So I think we've taken a couple steps that way, and that's helped us during the disruption, just being a couple steps ahead.
That'll be great. Okay, one more question, and then I think we're going to wrap because I know we have another session coming in here, and none of us have our watches on up here, so I want to be careful of time. But anyway, so T1, this one's for you.
Okay.
A big portion, again, of the Circle of Excellence is about diversity and inclusion. And I think that I'm really impressed with the team. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're moving that needle forward and what differentiates Lenovo and what you've done with that in the last 2 years?
Yeah, so obviously a real important topic for me. When Renee promoted me to executive a couple of years ago, first thing I told Renee, I said, Renee, I'm going to do everything I can to make the road easier for more people just like me to be executives in this company. And Renee said, T1, she would say like this, she said, I wouldn't expect anything less, right? And Lenovo is, and Ben alluded to it, is on the front line of DE&I. It's one thing to say it, but we just recently rolled out a DE&I playbook, which consists of tactics, strategies, and actions, where we hold our leadership team accountable for driving and delivering DE&I metrics and results across the business. A prime example, we just rolled out KPIs across the business for every single employee across our business, whether you're an executive, whether you are a manager, or whether you're an individual contributor. Each employee has a DE&I KPI metric that they'll be targeting this fiscal year. So that's an example. Another example is working closely with historically black colleges and universities. We have representation goals for non-executives and executives across women, underrepresented minorities, Black, Latinx, and we have incremental goals for each year. And what we're trying to do is establish relationships with university relations, HR, talent, to make sure we're engaging those pockets of underrepresented minorities across the universities and, quite frankly, in some of our competitive companies that are out there, to bring in those women executives, those Black and Latinx executives into the fold so we can have a more diverse leadership team, because we want our leadership team to be reflective and representative of the communities we serve, and more importantly, our clients. So diversity is very, very important. It's near and dear to my heart. I mean, if you look around here, we've got less than probably 3% Black, right, and Latinx. And so we've got to do better. Lenovo's doing a great job, but there's always room for improvement in this area.
I love it too, but the inclusion is, I think, so incredibly important. So needless to say, I think everybody here knows why Lenovo won the Circle of Excellence. So can we give the team and the leaders a huge round of applause? And remember, next year, it could be you on the stage. So if you think that your company is a Circle of Excellence Award winner, send me an email. You have to have a nomination. If you're somebody in the room that you work with that you think is deserving of the award, again, send me a nomination. And all three of you have to go out then, because I want an interview with Helen after this. But thank you so much again. I know we've got another group to get on stage, and we've got our hopeful live audience not quite joining us yet. So quick change. Let them clear the tables back in this room, and we'll get on with the show. Thank you. You guys did awesome.